Well, frankly, the real impetus was looking at an organization that was 70 years old, 70 years old, and actually looking at the opportunities for the future and where they were right now. So the larger mission was to determine where we would be going in the future. From that work, we had two major directives. One was to fully research both the constituency, the current users, and the potential future users of the credit union. That was one. And number two was to identify those things that were working well. So we looked at all of that. We spent about a year doing consumer research of existing members and then people that were eligible but not using services. And from there, we derived this current, if you will, value proposition that we're putting out in the marketplace. Also during that time, we grew from under 400 million to almost 550 million in assets. And we are now the largest credit union serving the biomedical industry in the nation. So the shift in focus was a fuller view of the NIH plus as the future versus NIH alone as the future. It's also important to note that we looked at different charter methodologies because the first 70 years of the credit union, they served NIH plus just a very small group of SEGs, a handful of hospitals primarily, and now our charter covers the entire state of Virginia, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and West Virginia to serve the entire biomedical and healthcare industry. So quite a change in scope that led to or preceded the rebranding. So the rebranding followed the redefinition of the organization and its mission from the board. And then from there, once I was engaged as the CEO, we went into the discovery phase I just referenced, which was a lot of research that included both internal with the staff, the entire staff, not just executive staff, as well as the current members and future members of the credit union. We hired two areas of consultancy. One is members research. Neil Goldman helped with all the consumer research that was done, all the focus group work that was done. And Weber Marketing Group, Mark Weber specifically, and his team did the internal work with the entire staff and the board. So it wasn't, if you will, it wasn't focused specifically on a top-down methodology, but we wanted to include the entire team in the process as we were shaping the offering and the branding and so on and so on. And so the view was to change ourselves by three-phase restructuring. A restructuring of the balance sheet for many reasons to have a sustainable new business model. The restructuring of the organization, full restructuring and moving to an outcome-based success model for the staff versus activity-based outcomes. And then a strengthening of the core. So we had to first, again, rebalance the whole portfolio. That meant selling off portions of the portfolio, changing a business model where instead of holding mortgages, we're selling them through the secondary market at a very high velocity, introducing new loan products, and again, the full restructuring of the balance sheet. And the restructuring of the organization was from stem to stern, inside, outside. It included outsourcing some functions to enhance the offering to the members. So for instance, we're among the first financial institutions in the country to fully outsource all debit and all ATMs. Replaced every ATM in the system to the new state-of-the-art ATMs exactly like those used by Chase Manhattan for full image capture, and at the same time replaced every debit card and put in place a rewards methodology and outsourced that entire functionality, better security, better services, so on and so forth. So that's just one. Actually, it did not necessarily better represent the existing constituency, which 60% of the constituency at the time was aging out, aging up, out of their borrowing sweet spot, if you will, moving more into a savings mode. So frankly, it reflects incoming, future constituency, your first-time borrower, your early borrower, your first home, your trade-up car, people trying to pay off their educational debt, our future constituency that we're building is highly educated but highly in debt from student loans. So a lot of the offerings we're building for folks, you know, your respiratory therapists, your nurses, physical therapists, so on and so forth, and our bioscientists who come with $50,000 and up in school loans. So that's a part of what we have to look at as we're focusing on the future constituency. The vision for that actually budded out of the board. Now, the process of applying for such a charter change is very significant. It's a large endeavor, and we utilize the services of Dennis Dollar and Associates in the actual preparation of all the documentation, the filing, and now the administration of that charter. Because although it's very inclusive in some ways, it's very exclusive in others. So there were individuals that could have joined the credit union under the old charter that can no longer join the credit union. So there was a trade-off, significant trade-off. This credit union would be one that was very focused on a niche group of consumers rather than going community charter. But we're an industry-focused credit union, founded by the NIH scientists. We love it. And many of those folks now move out into industry. And that's another interesting point. In the day that NIH was founded 70 years ago, and for 50 to 60 years after that, many people that went to work at NIH stayed there for their entire career. That was very common. Not so much anymore. Approximately a decade or so ago, you found that the new scientists entering in might stay a while at NIH and then hop into other industries. So as the biomedical industry is exploding and going outward, thus the scientists are moving outward. So it's a whole different model and concept. And the same for healthcare workers. In the old days, a nurse would describe themselves as employed by such and such a hospital. Now you'll find people are defining themselves more by the occupational choice. I'm a geriatric nurse, I'm a neonatal nurse, and they are moving from one location to another. So it's been a shift, if you will, in the industries themselves. The full offering across all channels is being modified. I mentioned that we changed debit programs. We've offered an international remittance program has been added in. We've now moved to an outsourced call center, which is 24/365, full contact. So what we're doing is meeting the needs for all shifts of workers in biomedical and healthcare. That's a significant change. We've upgraded every area of our online service offering, launched a new very functional website. And frankly, we've already achieved in the last 2 years where over 90% of our loans are being originated via the web. Over 90%. This year we're going for 95% of all new loans onboarding coming from the web. And the nature of the loans has changed. So in this change, we are now positioned as a major mortgage provider. We're providing small business loans to for instance, our first small business loan was to a social worker that had worked in a hospital for years, one of our hospitals, and she saw the need for transportation services for many of her patients, difficult in the DC metro area to book transportation. So she received a loan from us, bought her first ambulance, has bought her second ambulatory vehicle, and so on and so forth. So those are some initial shifts.